Look at this smiling face. If you're watching on YouTube, on Twitter right now, if you're listening, you're going to hear it in just a quick second. It's our good friend for our opponent preview this week here on Puck Sports. It's Michael-Shawn Dugar from The Athletic, co-host, Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, reporter for The Athletic. I probably should have went with The Athletic first and then Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, but I get so excited that one of the hosts of Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast is on this show, Michael-Shawn Dugar. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Dugar. Oh, man, it's good to see your face. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I get paid for the podcast and from The Athletic, so they can go in either order. It's fine. I'm cool with either one. The Seahawks Man-to-Man is my baby. Obviously, I love working for The Athletic too. I'm doing good, man. Let's start with a Go Cougs, though. How about the Cougs right now? I got my Cougs sweater on for everyone who can see. I'm thoroughly enjoying this ride, knowing the fluidity and uncertainty of college football. I love just every week I am just poured into us because I know that everything can change in a matter of a few days once we have our final game, whenever that is. So I'm really enjoying every moment, every interview you do with Dickert. I've texted you after a couple of them. Every game, every win. I'm not taking any of this for granted. I really love the season.
I love watching the college football ranking show because I'm like, I don't know if they're ever going to be in this position again. And yeah, is it a long shot? Well, damn right, it's a long shot. But it's just fun to see their name splashed up there. And this is the year of the Cougs when you start thinking about it. So you got them. They got this outside shot to play in the college football playoffs. Mike, next year the football team is going to be traveling to Oxford, Mississippi, to go play Ole Miss. I've always wanted to go there to watch a game. They're going to travel to Charlottesville to go to Virginia. I've always wanted to see that. And then the basketball team's averaging like 95 points a game right
right
now.
Yeah.
They've got like 10 guys on this team that all can shoot and pass the ball. It looks like a freaking all-star European team out there. And then oh, by the way, in November, that basketball team's playing in Maui in the Maui Invitational. I mean, it's just the year of the Coug.
Yeah, no. On the basketball side, I haven't got to watch yet, but I mean, I see the box scores. I'm like, oh my goodness. I also don't know our coach much. I haven't really talked to anybody who's met him, but I love Jake. Jake has handled this the situation. He's a leader. He's a leader, and it's certainly refreshing considering our last two head coaches. Like you can just see the difference. Play a Dickert interview versus a Rolovich interview or a Leach interview. You can damn near feel the level of accountability, the humility, the honesty, and especially the accountability. I thought what he was talking to you about with how he handled getting mad at Dean, our kicker, in the San Diego State game. That's important. It's like, how can I ask our kicker to keep his cool when I'm not keeping my cool? Now, the answer is because you're the coach and he's your subordinate, but he didn't care about the power dynamic there. He just said accountability is accountability, which I can appreciate that. That's what leadership looks like. So I love Jake. I'm appreciating every game we have him because I know that's not guaranteed either.
Stop it. You're going to start sounding like Jim Moore now. Just always like negative and waiting for like another school to come get him. Hey, all right. I'm going to get to the Niners here in a second. Opponent preview. Got the Niners coming up on Sunday. And again, I mean, the Niners ran them off the field in that first meeting, and they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Now McCaffrey's back. You brought up accountability. I think this guy's been accountable, but, as you see on the rundown, there's a lot of pressure mounting, I think, for John Schneider. It's safe to say this was a disaster of an offseason for him. The acquisition of the two linebackers, Mike, that are no longer with the team. Once again, a failure to address adequately the offensive line, with Connor Williams, and now is Christian Haynes not good? I mean, I know it's probably too early to tell, but this guy can't get on the field. Listen, I don't think they're going to make some move at the end of the season, but this was a big offseason for him in a big season, and I'm just curious from your perspective, covering this team day in and day out for The Athletic, what do you think it's been like for him so far as now being the guy running this organization?
I would hope that it's a little humbling, like he really wanted a lot on his plate, because if you think about it, it was a bit of arrogance tied to what Jody Allen and particularly John did this offseason. They didn't get rid of anything but the coaches. They kept their strength staff, the nutritionists, they even maintained guys like EK, their equipment dude, Mo Kelly, who's basically a do-it-all guy inside the building, kept everything the same. The entire scouting department, talked to John all offseason. Nothing about how they were scouting players changed, no philosophy changes to approach the free agency draft. They did get a new salary cap guy. They lost Matt Thomas. I think he just left, though. I don't think that was a performance-based thing. So you basically said, you know what the problem was here? Just Pete and his guys. So if you just get rid of them, I can find better, and we'll go in. That's pretty arrogant. I can see how someone would feel that way if you're John or Jody, but it is, got to call it what it is. It was arrogant. And, there's some things that are always going to be out of your control. I think a good example of like good process, bad results would be their right tackle situation. They didn't know what was going on with Abe, so they signed George, a competent backup at a decent cost. Cool. And they also drafted Mike Jarrell in the 6th round, took a flyer on a guy. Now, is it his fault that Abe's knee didn't heal up fast? George blew his knee out. Stone, I think, hurt his knee, and then Mike Jarrell, your 6th round rookie, has to play meaningful snaps? No, that's good process, bad result. Everything else was bad process. There's a lot of bad process this offseason. He hired a coach who didn't have experience. That's fine. But then that coach then surrounded himself with other guys who don't have experience, a DC with no experience, an OC who's never been in the NFL, an O-line coach who hasn't been in the NFL. You hired Leslie Frazier as well, but that's an uphill battle. Look at the coaches in Mike McDonald's hiring cycle, and I'm bringing up the coaches because those guys are under John's purview now as part of his contract. When you fire Pete, look at the coaches in the hiring cycle that are having success. They're coaches who have been head coaches before, Raheem Morris, Harbaugh, DQ in Washington, and they're guys who also brought people with them with whom they were familiar. Harbaugh hiring Greg Roman, and I think Raheem Morris's OC came with him before, even his DC, which I think is Jimmy Lake. DQ bought guys he knew from Dallas, got Ken Norton, brought in Bobby. There's continuity and familiarity, which helps you weather storms. Mike doesn't know any of these guys. Maybe knows them from passing, but he tried to build a full meritocracy with the staff, not just go through his call log and call up the homies he knew. That's admirable, but you can see the growing pains. This is like as sloppy as they've ever been, in all 3 phases, special teams, offense, defense, penalties, operational issues. They can't snap the ball. And that falls under John. He was like, I'm going to replace this veteran guy and his veteran staff with all this continuity and bring in rookies, essentially, and that's a process that when you just say it out loud is super flawed. And not to say it can't work, but when you have these growing pains, they then are labeled as predictable growing pains. And in a year where you're trying to compete for a championship, John's words, from his mandate from his boss, that's a tough ask. I feel like Mike's been put in a tough ask by the people above him. And by people, I mostly mean John, Bert, and Jody.
But when you look at and I agree with you, the play on the field, I mean, that's been kind of at times most disturbing, right? Is what you just detailed, where all the false starts, not getting guys on the field, the procedure penalties and all that. When we get to and that you place that on coaching, and to your point, that John shares the blame because you're putting guys in position that never have had that coaching, resume or that coaching experience at that level. But the players, though, I mean, to go into an offseason, which was going to be vitally important for you to put your stamp on it. And again, I mean, you get 9 weeks into the season, and the 2 linebackers that you identified as being the replacements for Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks, they're gone. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that is a massive red flag on John Schneider. I mean, I guess, Mike, how did we get here? How did they misevaluate those 2 guys so badly?
I really think that this was an example of a lack of self-awareness by John and Jody in terms of roster construction. They felt like they were close. Think of the first words John Schneider said in his press conference after Pete was gone. He said, in 2022, we overachieved. In 2023, we underachieved. And those are fine assessments of those 2 seasons. I don't necessarily disagree. But I don't think that me and John would agree on what achieving would have looked like the right level of achieving would have looked like in 2023. He probably thinks they should have won a championship or contended for one. I think that's ridiculous. There's nothing about their roster that says you'll go toe-to-toe with the 49ers. Damn the Rams for a second. Just look at the 49ers and how many blue chip players they have. And when you think you're close, You only put Band-Aids on stuff. You don't go get the surgery you need. You rub some dirt on it and go out there. It needed a surgery. It's like playing through a bad ankle or a bad knee when you need to go get in there and have it fixed, like really surgically repaired and sit down for a little bit, rehab, and then you're back to yourself. John kind of took the roster and was like, we can play through this pain. And that's not a realist. That shouldn't have been the view. That's how you get to, okay, we'll just fix this with a bunch of guys on 1-year deals. Very rarely do teams succeed that way, where it's just, okay, we just need a couple 1-year deals on our O-line, a couple 1-year deals at safety, a couple 1-year deals at linebacker, even tight end with the addition of Farrell Brown, another move that kind of hasn't panned out. He's no better from what I can see than AJ Barner, a 4th round or whatever rookie, so that's how you get there. Is a lack of true evaluation of your roster. You think you're close, so you make we're close moves, whereas other teams make more drastic moves or just make moves in general, that are better. That's what they had to do. I can't necessarily name all the players they should have gone after or maybe should have drafted instead, but that's how we got here as a we're close mindset, and they weren't. So now that's how you end up in last place through 10 weeks or whatever.
How much say, though, do you think, how much say did McDonald and his new staff have in Jerome Baker, in Tyrel Dodson? Did they think that these two would be good for the defense and the scheme that he wants? Because he comes out now after Baker, then now after Dodson, saying, we expect a certain style of play, responsibility from our linebackers. And I'm just curious, well, you saw plenty of tape on these guys, before you acquired them. Did you not see anything on there that told you then that they wouldn't be a good fit for the defense that you want to execute?
Yeah, I think specifically with the defense, I don't know where Mike's level of culpability falls on the offense and where Grubb goes into that. But defensively, for sure, there's a level of culpability that comes with Mike McDonald. Although I do think that Mike's probably in a situation, I'm projecting here, not reporting, but like if John says, hey, man, I got this linebacker, I can get you Tyrel Dodson. And if you're Mike, how much pushback can you actually give to you, essentially your boss now, that says like, hey, no, I need someone better. And John tells you, well, this is the best that's out there. How much can you actually fight back? Like, let's say in theory, he comes to him and says, hey, I got Jerome Baker for you, who signed first. And Mike says, well, no, he stinks. Okay, well, John gives you a list of other guys. Well, if they all stink more, Mike could have maybe, envisioned this scenario, but like, what can you do? You can only, buy what's at the store. I could easily see that being the case because of how John budgets. Mike probably thought there were a ton of better inside linebackers, in free agency. They're probably more expensive. I think Patrick Queen makes way more than Jerome Baker and Tyrel Dodson, for instance. So even if he wanted to bring Queen with him from Baltimore, how much level of say could he really have had when your boss budgets one way because his boss budgets one way? I think even if he felt like, Jerome, this could be a stretch, or hey, Tyrell, this could be a stretch, or hey, Lake and Tomlinson could be a stretch. How much wiggle room did he have as a coach to even push back? Yeah. Probably far less than his predecessor, of course. I think that's important, which is why I just go straight to the guy in charge of the budget, the guy in charge of scouting the players, because ultimately it's very rare for Mike, with all the stuff he had to do this offseason, get the scheme in, just learn how to be a head coach, to also be like, hey, I want A, B, and C free agents. I think the way the Giants operated on Hard Knocks is generally a good kind of rundown of how teams work. The scouting staff has its meetings. They do their things. They look at their guys. Then they were bringing Daboll in to be like, hey, of these dudes, who do you like more? Not Daboll saying, hey, I like this guy. Go get him. Go offer him this. Daboll came in towards the end of those processes, or however you say that. I would imagine a very similar situation with Mike where, yeah, by the time he sits down in John's office, it's like, hey, here's the 3 inside linebackers within the budget we like. Who you like the most? Okay, cool. I could imagine that being the setup in Mike McDonald's year with the Seahawks.
I wonder, do you envision a scenario where in this offseason where Mike McDonald becomes a little bit more forceful in his opinions and sharing them with John about what he needs and what he wants?
100%. I mean, if Mike were to ask me, he just ran into him at the bar and he was like, hey, Mike, what do you think I should do? I'd be like, yeah, dude, go assert yourself. Like, because ultimately, the interests of the front office and the coaching staff, as much as they're supposed to be aligned, they're not always. Sometimes guys get hired before someone else, their contract's up, blah, blah, blah. The timelines are not always aligned, which is why usually you hire those dudes together so they are aligned, right? In some cases, they are not. Like the front office could think, hey, we need to kind of tear this down, where the coach is like, dude, I'm trying to win. You see that happen with teams where there's this tug of war. Saw that happen with the Eagles. They ended up benching their quarterback a few years ago in like week 17. The Dolphins had an issue with that with Flores. I think he sued the organization over it. He wanted to win. They wanted to not win so they could get a higher draft pick. Like the visions are not always aligned. And if you're Mike, I think he should go make very clear, like, yo, no, like I need the best product possible, however that looks, because John's very much a budget shopper. Like he wants to have relatively clean books going into every year. He's not trying to swipe the credit card like the Saints or like the Dolphins are maxed out for the next few years. The Rams maxed out for a few years there. Like those teams said, we'll do through hell or high water. We're going to put a championship caliber roster on the field. Whether they did or not is whatever. That was the process. Whereas John is very much, we're going to put a championship caliber roster on the field at a cost that we like. And that's very important because that hamstrings you quite a bit. That means you can't afford the good guards. You got to get maybe this guard is okay. You can't afford the good pass rusher. You got to get, maybe Draymond Jones is good. They're like, that's much different. And that does not align with the coach who would obviously want the best players available.
But why? So when you think about Schneider and his development, and we talk about the same storyline every single year, Mike, and that is their inability to build an offensive line. And this is 10 years now. I mean, this is going back to the last Super Bowl run. I mean, I looked this up and I was just curious, like, who was their last Pro Bowl offensive lineman?
That's a fun trivia question.
Do you know who it is?
Okay, so Britt was an alternate in 2016, I think, so I'm gonna scrap him. I'm guessing it was no, Dwayne Brown made it. Dwayne Brown in 21. Yes. Now for a bonus, who was the last guy he drafted? That would have to be Okung, right? I think.
Yeah, Russell Okung in 14.
Yeah,
14 or 13.
Something along the lines of there. And that is why I also go to front office, man. Look at how many problems the Seahawks have that have been problems. It's not like new stuff.
But it's been a problem for that's sort of I don't get. It's like it's the same thing every year, and like it seems like I don't know why it doesn't stare them in the face, and it's not like they haven't gone out, in the draft and addressed it. They've drafted a lot of guys. They've clearly they weren't the right guys, but there have been. It's not like they haven't gone and spent draft capital. So I'm just curious, like, where is the disconnect between the is it the evaluation? Is it the coaching? What is it? Why this team now, we sit here in 2024, we'll go into another offseason, and depending on how, let's just say Lucas is healthy and he's fine. He's playing to his level he was as a rookie. Well, you're still going to go in probably thinking, well, we need to upgrade 3/5 of our offensive line again. I mean, that's
I think it's over that time period that we're talking about since the last Pro Bowler drafted. It's a few things. Part of it was just deferring to Tom Cable was a mistake. They were doing that quite a bit for a large stretch of that O-line evaluation there. But even then, you go beyond that, hiring Mike Solari, Andy Dickerson. I really think that's where the evals just got bad. I think for a while, what they were doing on top of deferring to Tom was, let's get guys who can do everything, do a little bit of everything. And I just think that was a terrible strategy. And I think they got better at that in recent years. Instead of like, oh, this guy can play guard, he can play center in a pinch if we need it. It was like, well, why don't we just find a guy who's good at the thing? He does this one thing really well. Damian Lewis was a great example of that. He was a really good run blocker in college. I think he was on the LSU national championship team. Great run blocker, had some issues in pass pro. And he had no positional flexibility. He was a guard. And then the Panthers ended up giving him like $50 million. Not a surprise, that's one of the guys who ended up getting paid that John drafted because he was a master of a thing. Wasn't a jack of all trades like Ethan Posick. They tried to make him everything, center, guard, No, he was a center at LSU, a good one. And you had him play everything. And then what was he best at? Center. Justin Britt, another high pick. They tried to have him do everything. I think that was a huge issue in the evaluation process. I'm no O-line expert, but that was very evident that when they kind of stopped focusing on that versatility, that they started getting better guys. Even with Charles and Abe, Charles was a little bit of a no-brainer and also the best tackle available at the time.
Right.
But even with Abe, it was just like, yo, this dude kicks ass in pass pro. He's not going to play guard. We don't need him ever taking snaps as the center. He is a tackle and a damn good pass protector. He's mastered that skill because of the scheme he's played in and his athleticism. Let's take him and have him do the thing. And Abe's great. And I think that was a huge issue with the evaluation process that has gotten a little bit better. But I think it took some steps back
what
in
has
the
happened
last couple seasons.
Yeah, but what about the last 2 seasons? I mean, you got last year where you take Anthony Bradford in the 4th round. This year you take Haynes in the 3rd round. I mean, are they just complete whiffs, or does it fall on the player? Where does it? Why are these two? I mean, these 2 guys should be your starting guards right now.
Yeah, I think that is where the coaching poly has come in, I think, a little bit, because Bradford profiles similarly as D-Lou, where it's like, oh, you're a guard. I think these are all guys from the SEC. Might even all be from LSU now I think about it.
And they are. And like I'm telling you, Mike, if I'm going to draft from one conference, that's the conference I'm going to draft offensive linemen from.
That's just, the one. Yeah. No, you're right.
It makes sense.
I think the coaching has been a little bit of an issue there, because those guys are going to have deficiencies, and you do have to be able to get them there.
Yeah,
you know, like even with Abe, I think they even did a good job. Abe, he probably had single-digit run block snaps in college, you know, but he's a really good run blocker. You know, they were able to help him out with that. I think he helped himself there by his pre-draft training. I think he worked on a lot of that. Same thing with Charles, who came from the air raid as well. But with AB and D-Lou, it was very clear that you needed to make sure that they were not liabilities in pass protection. And I think that was the main thing. That's the main thing that coaching has to do with your guys up front. If they do master a thing, they're good at pass pro, they're good at run blocking. You don't have to make sure they're great at everything till they're all pro, but you got to make sure they're just not a liability at the other thing. And I think that's where they've come up short. I think every O lineman has some deficiencies. Even Charles Cross has them. You know, Trent Williams, all pro, he has them. But can you get the guys to be consistently not a liability at the other thing they're not strong at? And that's where you have issues. Like, that's clearly Anthony Bradford's issue. He can move a 355-pound nose tackle all the way down the field in the run game. But the minute there's a D tackle in front of him with any sort of cat-like quickness, he's done.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you can't have. Not to say AB has to win every rep, but he was a turnstile in the Rams game. Braden Fisk looked like Aaron Donald in that game, specifically going against the interior. And that's not even before we get to centers. They legitimately haven't had a good center since Max Unger. And I put that squarely on John. That's John. He gave up at Max and has never had a good plan.
Never replaced him. No, it's unbelievable. Okay, so they're going to get in. Okay, let's just say I'm going to be glass half empty here for a second. All right. The odds are stacked against him for the remaining games of the season. They will likely be favored in maybe one or 2 games at Chicago, maybe at New York. Rest of the games, I would expect them, because we always like to bring this back to gambling. I expect them to be underdogs in all those games. Mike, let's say they go 6-11. Okay, which is it's not out of the realm. I mean, that's very likely that they'll go 6-11. What do you do in the offseason? Because you aren't just a few players away from getting back to competing for a championship, but yet you've got 2 massive decisions to make, and it's been a big topic. I've talked about it all week long, and I love DK Metcalf. Like they have something they've never had before in terms of a wide receiver. Like, I've been watching this team since I was 8 years old. It's Steve Largent and Brian Blades. I mean, that's it. You know. Not this guy that is as physical and as fast and just can run everything, and he's just a special football player. But he's going to command a lot of money, all right, a lot. And then you have that decision to make. And I guess the argument would be, is it worth paying that amount of money to someone if you still don't have the offensive line fixed? Because how can he really truly be effective if the offensive line isn't fixed? And then therein lies the other one. What do you do with your quarterback? He's a guy. He's going to want to get paid. And they're certainly not going to have him on that number next season, which is what, 38 million.
They're
going to want to they're going to want to renegotiate that. What do you do if they're 6-11 in the offseason?
It would suck for the team and the players and a lot of the coaches who would probably get canned in that scenario. But I do think from a front office perspective, that's probably what they need. I think the worst thing you can do is convince yourself you're close when you're not. I just listened to a little bit of Joe Shane, the Giants press conference, Giants GM. He said the same thing, even though they're like 2-8. He was like, yeah, look how many games were close. And it's like, Joe, you're not close though. You're not. I'm a big point differential guy. That'll tell you what type of team you are,
Yeah.
win or lose. The year the Giants made the playoffs, they had a negative point differential. They were not close, even though they won like 10, 11 games, something like that. Same thing with the Vikings that year. They went like 13-3, had a negative point differential. They were not close. Sometimes you need that reality check of like, you just got to stink. So you can't lie about where you are. Can't lie to yourself. So I think that if they do like bottom out, which however that record looks, I think you got to get to the point where what I would do if they ask me again, if I saw John at the bar, not with Mike McDonald there, just me and John in this scenario.
Just you and John.
Just me and John, two guys having beer too.
Having a Georgetown beer.
There you go. I say, John, everyone who's you got Geno, DK, Leonard Williams, because you just paid him, so that the math on that is funky.
Yeah.
Anyone else who's not on a rookie deal, you don't need. Like literally anyone else, you don't need. It doesn't even matter. Special teams, receiver, lineman, linebacker, doesn't matter. If they're not currently on a rookie deal, you don't need them. You need to reset. And it doesn't mean you have to stink. I think the 2023 Rams are a really good example. They had like 4 dudes making money, and that was it. It was like Stafford, Cup, Donald, maybe, and that was pretty much their roster. And then it was Rooks. I think they signed when your roster was 90 people. They signed like 40 undrafted free agents or something like that as rookies. Like it was rookies, vet mins, and like 4 expensive guys. Because everyone's gonna have expensive guys, so I don't think everyone needs to be on minimum wage. Like if you want to pay Geno and you want to pay DK or make him wait, that's fine. His deal's not up, so you can make him wait. I guess he loves football too much to hold out into the season, so I don't think you have to worry about that. It would get ugly, but business is business. So if you got Geno, DK, Leo, because you just paid him. Outside of that, I think anyone else who's not on a rookie deal, you hit the button on, no matter what the savings is or isn't. Now, if you lose money, I think you might on Julian, since you just paid him, then maybe not. But everyone you gain something on that's not on a rookie deal, I think you go. And I think you go pennies on a dollar sale, get draft picks, whatever. I really think that's what you got to do to get more bites at the apple. And truly develop too. They're doing all this plug and play stuff with guys even if they were good, then what? Like Laken Tomlinson. All right, what if he was good this year? Well, then what? You probably still need another left guard next year. You know, if Tyrell Dotson killed it, well, then what? You know, if Jerome Baker had killed it, well, then what? All these guys are on 1-year deals. If Rayshawn Jenkins killed it, well, then what? I think he's on a 2-year, but you get where I'm going with all of that. If Connor Williams killed it, well, then what? They don't have any money in 2025. They're in the red currently. So I think that's also where you get value in resetting, because then if guys do kill it, like the Rams are with their D-line and the Niners are with their rookie class, if they do kill it, you can grow and develop them without having to make hard decisions and be right at square one in the offseason. So that's what I would tell John. 1 beer in, 2 beers in, whatever. You got those 3 dudes. Anybody else not on a rookie deal, thank them for their service, because you need that reset, because that's why you're 6-11 or whatever record you finished with.
I appreciate the thank them for your service. So you wouldn't consider, you don't think they may consider trading DK in the offseason?
No, because I do think blue chip players are just hard to find. Yeah. And I do think that there's just headaches that come with some of them or whatever. Like DK has some penalty issues. Yeah. He may or not get ejected if you guys are losing, for a fight or whatever. But I do think he's one of the true game wreckers. Yeah. And those are just hard to find. The Seahawks are a great illustration of how hard that is to find.
Right.
Like they can look around in their own division and see how their opponents finding these guys and the Seahawks not. So I don't think it's worth giving one of those guys away, especially since you don't have to. I do think you can play hardball with him because he loves football too much to hold out into the season. He has the same agent, I think, as like A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, those guys who have fought for their money, but ultimately, like, they were never going to miss games. So I think he's one of the guys I would keep. He's also relatively young. I think he turns 27 next month, maybe. So, like, him, Leo, and Geno, because I think Geno, I just like him, but also quarterback is one of those positions that if you're going to get rid of the guy, you better have a damn good plan for what you're going to do otherwise, and not just wing it. I think the Raiders made a huge mistake with that. They were just like, what are we going to do? Don't matter. I love Gardner, but he's not an answer for a franchise, right? So now they're playing musical chairs over there. So I think that you have to have a plan. Even in that scenario, if they finish 6-11, that's not worse than the Titans who need a quarterback, the Raiders who need a quarterback, the Panthers who could draft a quarterback, the Giants who could draft a quarterback, and the Browns who damn sure better draft one, not to mention the Saints. Like, all of these teams are probably ahead of you, are not willing to trade back. So that's tough to be in. So I think that you can still try to find your developmental guy while keeping Geno, because you do still need to like be able to give guys in the locker room hope. You can't just run out there and be ass. That's just how you lose your locker room as a coach. Mike's
Right.
he don't have no benefit of the doubt. You
Yeah.
got to have a competent roster of some sort. Otherwise, you risk kind of being where like the who's real bad right now that nobody's playing for them. Eberflus. Like he's lost that whole
Bears,
thing.
Jags.
Yeah. You can't have those situations, which is what you run into if you completely gut the whole thing.
Absolutely. Well, this was fun. It's been way too long. Michael-Shawn Dugar, The Athletic. You can find all of his work there up at The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Dugar. Co-host, go check it out with our guy Chris Kidd, the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast. Tell everyone where they can find that, Mike.
Oh, yeah. Just follow me on X, Twitter, whatever, at Mike Dugar. All the stuff you need from me is pinned to the top of my profile, my bio. That's where you can find my author page at The Athletic. So you just click that. It'll show up. The most recent edition of the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast is always pinned to the top of my profile as well. That includes our YouTube channel. That includes Apple, Spotify. Wherever you're watching or listening to this, we're available as well. Okay. That's the simple version of that.
You got it. Mike, let's do it again soon, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
There he is. Michael-Shawn Dugar here with us. Of course, you can watch this up on YouTube. Please subscribe and like up there, and also listen to it later when you're not watching it. Listen to it live up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, one-stop shop, always up at pucksports.com.